As you guys may have heard, Joe Biden obviously is struggling in the polls, and we're going to actually talk about the polls first, and then we're going to get to the TikTok issue. With the Biden administration, I told you that he has been losing support tremendously from African-American voters. Well, while he's losing support, it appears that Donald Trump is gaining support and it's continuing to increase. I talked about this once on the show before, but now there is new polling that shows that more African-American voters are going towards Donald Trump. Let's go ahead and bring this up here.
For the weekend, a direct push from Donald Trump to pick up support among black voters, an historically Democratic voting bloc. CNN senior data reporter Harry Enton is with us. So where does the race stand among African-American voters right now?
Yeah, I keep looking for this to change, to go back to a historical norm, and it simply put has not yet. So this is the margin, or Biden and Trump among black voters, compare where we were at this point in 2020, compare where we are now. You know, at this point, look at this. In 2020, Joe Biden was getting 86% of the African-American vote. Look at where it is now. It's 70%. That's a 16-point drop, John. And more than that, it's not just that Joe Biden is losing ground, it's that Donald Trump is gaining ground. You go from 7%, single digits at this point in 2020, to now 21%. And again,
ladies and gentlemen, in my lifetime, and you can tell me if it was different for you. I know some of you are older than me, so let me know. In my lifetime, I have never seen a Republican candidate get that much support from the African-American community in the polls. In the polls. Look at this. Biden went from 86% in 2020 to 70%. And I'd argue, like, seriously, I think Biden has less than 70%. Because they're not including in these polls, right? Young people are usually not included in these polls. So just keep that in mind. Donald Trump had 7% in 2020. Donald Trump now has 21% of the African-American vote for 2024. And again, that doesn't include younger people. So that number could be higher and Joe Biden's number could be lower than the 70%. I don't remember in my lifetime a Republican candidate getting this high of a percentage of support from African Americans in the poll. 21%. How do you go from 7% to 21%? What does that say about Joe Biden's presidency? What does that say about the economy? What does that say about the Black community feeling as though that their needs have not been met by the Democratic Party? Because remember, we already had Trump as president. It's not like people are like, oh, I wonder what Donald Trump presidency will be like. We already had Donald Trump as president. That's the crazy part. And he still gained support. What does that say? Let's go on a little bit more here, and then we're going to go to the TikToker, and you're going to see what's happening with the younger generation as well.
Again, John, I keep looking for signs that this is going to go back to normal, and I don't see it yet in the polling. If anything, right now, we're careening towards a historic performance for a Republican presidential candidate, the likes of which we have not seen in 6 decades.
And when you dig into this number here, what is the makeup of that number?
This is where we get very interesting. So I decided to dive deeper into the crosstabs, figure out where is it that Joe Biden is truly struggling among black voters. All right. So this is black voters, Biden versus Trump margin. Look at black voters age 50 and older, and you'll see, look, Joe Biden was leading amongst this group at this point by 83 points back in 2020. Now it's 74 points. So yeah.
Pause. So even some of the older black voters, according to this poll, are not feeling Joe Biden. Now, that was more of a surprise to me. I would expect that to happen more on the younger side, but that was a surprise to me because a lot of like older black voters are more likely just going to support the party, right? So whoever the nominee is for the Democratic Party, they're going to vote Democrat because that's their party. Right. It's the same thing for the Republican Party. Some older voters for the Republican Party, they're going to support whoever the nominee is because they are supporting the party. Watch this part, though.
A slight decline in that margin, but nothing out of this world. Look at black voters under the age of 50. Holy cow, folks. Holy cow. Look at this. Joe Biden was up by 80 points among this group back at this point in 2020. Look at where that margin has careened down towards. It's now just, get this, 37 points. That lead has dropped by more than half, Mr. Berman.
Yes, more than half. And I think we all know why. Gaza, right? Now, see, some people said that because he canceled a portion of student loan debt, that was actually going to increase his support with younger voters. And I told people, I don't know about that. Because he made some promises to students that went to HBCUs that he would cancel all of theirs if they made under $125,000 a year. He did not fulfill that. I said, I don't know if that's going to be enough to increase his support with younger people. Went from plus 80 points to plus 37 points for 2024. Right? So there's Gaza. That's a really big one. We've been trying to explain this to people. For all the people who continue to tell me this is not an issue to a lot of voters, it is an issue to a lot of younger voters. It's an issue to me, right? I'm not Gen Z, but I'm under 50. And that is a big issue for someone like me. So that is very problematic. So this whole rhetoric, like we don't really need the young vote because we know that the older voters are the ones that usually come out anyway. People forget that Joe Biden did get a significant portion of the young vote in 2020. That's actually what helped him win a state like Georgia. Now, what do? What they are going to try to do, because I don't think he can turn this around with younger black folk. I don't think he can turn this around with longer black folk. I just don't think so, right? So what do they do? What is the Democratic Party going to do if they decide to keep Joe Biden there as the nominee for the party? I think what they are going to do is that they are going to try to appeal to the white suburban voters. And we'll see this happen, right? They did this in the suburbs of Atlanta for 2020. I think that's who they're going to start to reach out to. And they'll probably try to appeal more to white suburban women. And they're going to use the abortion issue to help them with that. That is just my prediction. If I was a strategist, that's how my mind would probably be working. So that type of thing. Because I don't think he's going to get that support back from younger black voters.
I just never seen anything like this. I'm like speechless. Because you always look at history and you go, okay, this is a historic moment. If this polling is anywhere near correct, we are looking at a historic moment right now where black voters under the age of 50, which have historically been such a big part of the Democratic coalition, are leaving it in droves.
That is a huge drop over a 4-year period, at least right now. All right, what's the impact of third-party candidacies here? Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yeah, so, all right, so obviously, we have third-party candidates this year with the two major party candidates being so disliked. All right, so this is black voters, Biden versus Trump in the battleground states. This was according to a poll last month from the New York Times, Siena College. Again, looks very similar to what we see nationally, right? Joe Biden at 63, a very poor position for a Democratic candidate. Donald Trump at 23%. If we add Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to this, look where Joe Biden drops to. Less than half the vote among black voters, less than half the vote among black voters in the battleground states. Donald Trump drops as well to 14%, so not quite nearly as historic.
So that's something that needs to be recognized as well. Once they add RFK Jr.'s name to this poll, Joe Biden drops down in the battleground states. We got to look at the title here to 49%. You see that? And Trump drops down to 14%. So what that shows you is that some black voters that may support Joe Biden or Donald Trump are willing to move over towards RFK Jr. That may not always be because of his policies. Part of that could be because of the name, the Kennedy name. They see that name and they're like, oh, it's a Kennedy. So yeah, I want to take things back to the way they were like under JFK, like that type of thing. So either way, it's a mess. OK, I showed you what it was like without RFK Jr. I'm showing you what it's like with RFK Jr. Either way, Joe Biden is losing black support. Donald Trump is gaining black support. And we have had both of them as president. But
look at this, RFK with 11%. You basically have a legitimate sort of three-way race here. Yeah, Joe Biden well ahead, but with less than 50% of the vote. John, I never thought I would see something like this among black voters.
And for those questioning who Robert Kennedy would hurt more, at least in these numbers, in this measurement right here, Biden loses 14, Trump loses 9. So it's clearly Joe Biden.
It's exactly right. It seems to me this is, yes, it's partially a artifact of Donald Trump perhaps being better liked among black voters, but it's also a real artifact of Joe Biden being significantly less liked among black voters than he was 4 years ago.
Harry, great to see you. Thank you very much. Sarah?
All right, so you notice he said he never thought that he would see this among black voters for the Democratic Party. I did, because let me tell you something about us, okay? We have no problem being supportive and being, devoted for a cause that we believe in. We have no problem being supportive of you. And when we feel like there are policies or certain agendas that are important to us in our community, we will come out and support. However, we're not just going to support you just because, That's the thing. It's just like, those days have gone. The days of we're going to support you because you're not Donald Trump, those days are gone. So these are the kind of things that we have to keep in mind. And the Democratic Party has taken the black vote for granted for a long time. And this is why I've continued to stress this since the first year I started the show. They have taken our vote for granted. And some of us that are millennials, some of us that did support Barack Obama, after that, we realized, what? That's not enough. And I think the Democratic Party continued to just assume that we would continue to support them regardless. So I think most black voters are going to stay home. But Joe Biden has a problem. Now, Harry Sisson, the TikToker who has been out there lying to support Joe Biden. I told you before, he was paid by the DNC, him and his friend. I don't see his friend as much anymore. His friend, Chris, I mainly see him. Harry Sisson is still trying to sell Biden onto people. So he is a viral TikToker. He makes videos for the Democratic Party to basically tell people Donald Trump is horrible because of this, and this is why you need Joe Biden. But of course, he is glossing over some of the things that Biden has done. Again, he's paid by the DNC to do this. I showed the receipts on this show before. He is going to sit here and tell you that Joe Biden's age is not a factor. Let's bring this in. This is a hot mess.
Poll after poll shows more voters have concerns about Biden's age, though, than they do Trump's. But the president is getting some help from a 21-year-old TikToker, Harry Sisson, whose videos pushing back on Trump have gotten as many as 15 million views.
Donald Trump is over there with his wealthy buddies at Mar-a-Lago saying, you get a tax cut, you get a tax cut, you get a it's nonsense. Just remember when Donald Trump said that he would date his own daughter. I mean, ugh. For a minute straight, Donald Trump talked about boats sinking, batteries, sharks, and water.
Pause. So the first part that he said there about Joe Biden, Donald Trump's there with his wealthy buddies, as if Joe Biden doesn't have wealthy buddies. When it comes to the class issue, they both have wealthy buddies. They're both in elite circles that you and I will never be a part of, right? So there's that. Donald Trump said he would date his own daughter. Didn't Joe Biden take a shower with his? So you see how some of the things that he uses to criticize Donald Trump can also be used to criticize Joe Biden. And this is why a lot of people don't want to support either one of them. I'm one of those people.
You have President Biden who talks about, wanting to lower healthcare costs, protecting the environment, giving women their reproductive rights back. Donald Trump is talking about that, whatever that was.
And Harry is out front now. So Harry, all right, just so everyone knows, you're in college now. You've just finished your junior year. Right. You've posted 560 videos just this year, meaning 2024, sticking up for Biden, pushing against his critics. So let me just ask you, as someone who just finished your junior year in college, how come? Why are you choosing to do this? It's obviously a huge investment of your time.
Look, just
because they paid him to do so. Obviously, he's not going to tell you that during this interview. He is paid to do so. He is not doing this. He's not one of the other TikTokers that was just like, you know what? I love the Democratic Party. I don't want Trump back in. I'm going to start making these videos. No, he is paid to do it by a consulting group for the DNC.
Just so much on the line right now. And this election is so important. And I think the choice couldn't be more clear. I've said before in my videos that I think this is the easiest choice that Americans will have to make in modern American history. Look, President Biden is incredibly accomplished, investing in infrastructure, lowering insulin costs, capping insulin at $35 a month, largest investment in fighting climate change in world history. I mean, the list is extensive. And that's an amazing resume to run on in and of itself. Then you look at the other side of the race. You have Donald Trump, the convicted felon, the proven sexual abuser, proven fraudster, who is not actually running on anything. He's running on...
Pause. So he brings up the sexual abuse piece, right? Doesn't Joe Biden still have sexual assault allegations against him from Tara Reid? So even though Donald Trump has been convicted about this in a civil suit, he has the conviction. Just because Joe Biden doesn't have the conviction doesn't mean he's not guilty. Got to pay attention to things.
I'm like, oh, I think Joe Biden's mean to me, the FBI sucks, and the DOJ is targeting me. That's his entire campaign.
So the thing is, though, again, you're 21 years old.
Yeah.
And a lot of people your age are doing other things, right? And many who don't have this same passion. So Biden was ahead of Trump by 29 points, last time around for voters 18 to 29. You weren't even in that range at that point, right? But he was ahead by 29 points. Now he's only ahead by 5. It's only ahead by 5. Okay, so when you look at the people that you are putting these videos out and hoping they see, why is that? Why has that plunged?
I think it's for a variety of reasons. I think that there's some dislike toward the president right now on a couple of different issues, the Middle East and the TikTok ban, Gaza specifically.
And the TikTok ban you think also?
Yeah, I talk to young people every single night on debates I do. And I hear that pretty frequently. But my argument back to them is that Trump is worse on both of these issues, right? When he was president, he banned TikTok. He had an executive order that would ban it in 45 days. President Biden's just looking for divestment. And with Gaza...
Pause. So first of all, let's break this down. So he actually spoke to Joe Biden. What he's leaving out is that the rule for that interview was that he could not talk about Gaza. So I think it's important for you to know that, because Harry doesn't mention that in this interview on CNN, and the commentator doesn't mention it during this interview. So I'm telling you this because I think it's important for you to know that when he says what he says about Biden and Gaza. Don't you think that's something that people should know? The fact that Joe Biden was willing to have a discussion with you, but before the interview, he told you that you could not bring up Gaza. So just know that when you're listening to this discussion. We'll get to the TikTok thing in just a second.
In the Middle East, it's tragic what's happening. But President Biden has been in government for decades. He has the foreign policy experience. He knows what he's doing. This is an experienced guy. And having somebody who's in office who knows what he's doing is important. Donald Trump can't find Gaza on a map.
All right.
Now, let's break this down. Let's go to TikTok. First of all, when it comes to TikTok, remember who was really behind the TikTok ban? What did I tell you guys? The ADL was behind the TikTok ban. That's what that was about. We covered that on this show. Harry Sisson doesn't mention that. I think that's important for people to know, right? Don't you think that Aaron would have brought that up during this interview? No, she doesn't. She doesn't mention anything about the ADL at all. So there's that. 2, listening to what he said about Joe Biden and the Gaza position, what's happening in the Middle East is horrible. But no, there is no but. You can't but a genocide. You can't but people starving. You can't but, I'm seeing pictures of babies, dead babies. You can't but that. You can't but people being purposely starved. You can't but any of those things. There's no buts, right? So he's willing to gloss over that because, as I told you, prior to that conversation with Joe Biden, he was told, you can talk to me about anything, but do not bring up Gaza. Is that someone that you want in charge of the country? Someone who doesn't want to talk about foreign policy issues? So he says Joe Biden has the experience. Yeah, he has experience being a warmonger. Yeah, he got some foreign policy experience. He got experience in approving and voting for all these damn wars since he was in the Senate. Yeah, he has that experience. Now, you know he has that experience, but he doesn't want to talk to you about one of the most important conflicts that's happening right now. What does that tell you, ladies and gentlemen? So they hired this dude who's a college student to try to get him to get the younger voters to support Joe Biden. That was prior to October 7th.
So when you are, I played some of the videos, right? You're pushing back on Trump specifically, and you're talking about, some of his rants on stage and how he goes from one thing to another. The implication being there's no connection, loses his train of thought. Okay. But right-wing media has been seizing on moments from Biden, right? Whether it's be gaffes or how he walks or walking off the stage, the G7, you've no doubt seen that one. So as a 21-year-old, when you see those things from Biden, how he talks, how he walks, the gaffes, do they give you pause?
Never once have I ever been concerned about the president's age. I mean, look, there's three things I think about when I think about the president's age. Look.
Pause. Don't you think this is a script? I've never once been concerned about the president's age. Guys, don't you think that's a little bit weird? Not once. Joe Biden not knowing when to leave the stage. Barack Obama just had to hold his hand to walk him off of the stage. Joe Biden not remembering who world leaders are. You don't have a problem with any of that. This guy that has so much experience in foreign policy, but he can't remember who some of the leaders are? Calling people the wrong names? Going to the wrong person? You never thought about this once. Then he goes on to say, I never had a concern about Joe Biden's age. We're not just talking about his age. I know people in their 80s that know who they're talking to. I know people in their 80s that don't sit down midair and thinking that they're sitting in a chair when there's no chair sitting there, okay? This is not just about his age. This is about cognitive decline. And that is what Joe Biden is experiencing. And you would have to be a fool or a paid shill to sit there and think and actually believe that Joe Biden is aware, is not having some type of cognitive decline, and that he can be trusted making foreign policy decisions running this country. Look at where we are now. We got a war with Russia and Ukraine, a proxy war. You have Israel's assault on Gaza. You have a humanitarian crisis in Sudan, which is one of the biggest humanitarian crises in the world right now. You have a genocide happening in the Congo. You had parts of Hawaii catch on fire and the president pretended like it wasn't an urgent issue. You have people that are sick and have received cancer in East Palestine, Ohio, because the president didn't give a damn that a train derailed and poisoned the people. Took him over a year to go visit East Palestine, Ohio. That's who you want running the country? It's not that difficult, folks. It's not going to kill you. You can think Trump is trash and also think Joe Biden is trash. You can think both of these politicians suck and you can choose to vote against both of them. It's not that difficult. Nobody is holding your hand when you go into the voting booth. At least I hope not. If so, let me know what's happening over there. But nobody is holding your hand when you go to vote. Ain't nobody taking pictures of you. Okay? No one's walking in with a video camera. The only thing that's stopping you breaking the duopoly is who you choose to support when you go to vote. You can do that. You can vote third party. You can vote independent. Both of these presidents are trash. I don't know how many times I need to say it. Let's continue.
Republicans and world leaders have said that he's fit to serve. Kevin McCarthy said that he's sharp, he's strong in negotiations. President Biden has also had a physical this year. And on site conducting exams were neurologists, and they said that he passes exams perfectly fine. And, I refer to President Biden's 60 Minutes interview where he said, watch me in a question about his age. And I'm watching him, and his record is fantastic. And the last thing I'll say is, I spent time.
No, we got to pause here for a second. And he's watching him. Did you guys watch him stand on the stage and Barack Obama had to take his hand and lead him off the stage? Did you watch that happen, Harry? Or did you watch it and you just pretending that you didn't see it because you're getting paid not to, right? So always follow the money. You know, did you watch Joe Biden lose track of his words mid-sentence? And I'll be interested to see how this debate turns out in the next couple of days. I'm willing to see, because part of me believes that they're going to give Joe Biden some type of uppers or something so that he can perform well in that debate. This is not 2020 anymore. Joe Biden has declined significantly since 2020. He hasn't seen any of that, he says.
President, I interviewed him and I was never concerned. He was sharp. He didn't get any advance on the questions I was asking. He gave me really thoughtful answers, and I've never been concerned about it.
All right, so
but he told you not to ask him about Gaza. And this is why people hate mainstream media, because they leave so much information out that you need to know.
and now you point out you've met him, you've been invited to events. Has the White House, the Biden campaign, ever tried to tell you what to say, tried to get you to look at something?
No, I've never gotten like a, you must post this, you must post this. There have been briefings where they say, look, there's so much misinformation on social media. We just want you to have the most accurate information, but there's no pressure to post. There's never been like, oh, you have to say this, or we're going to be angry with you or anything like that.
So let me go ahead and debunk something he just said there. There's no pressure on what he has to post, but there have been discussions with me about there's so much misinformation on social media. We just want you to be aware. Mother, isn't that the same thing as telling you what the fuck to post? Huh? Isn't that the same thing as telling you what not to post? There's so much misinformation there on social media. We just want you to be aware of what the misinformation is. That's the same thing as telling you what not to post. Should we give Harry an Oscar? Yay? No? Oscar for Harry? No? Yay?